Hello chess lovers, Student here, and in this video I want to share with you a game which Mikhail Tal played at a strange event held in 1973 in Moscow. 6 city teams competed, each team consisting of one grandmaster paired with 6 pioneers from their respective cities. Each grandmaster played a clock simul against the pioneers from each of the opposing 5 teams. Tal's Riga team finished third behind Moscow and Leningrad, ahead of Kiev, Cheliabinsk and Tbilisi. In this video I want to share with you a game which Tal played against Soviet-Ukrainian chess player Leonid Zaid. As I've already mentioned, this event was held in 1973 in Moscow. So in this game Tal had white pieces and he opened up with e4, to which Zaid answered with Sicilian defense. Knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, a6. Neither variation is on the board. Bishop g5, e6, f4 and queen b6. Zaid is boldly choosing the very sharp poisoned pawn variation, which leads to massive complications. With his last move, Black attacked the pawn on b2, and being a very aggressive player, Tal decided to make that sacrifice and he played queen d2. As you know, knight b3 is an alternative, but in the game we see queen d2, and there it goes. Black decided to capture the poisoned pawn. Here the main move is considered to be rook b1, but in the game we see knight b3, queen a3, bishop d3. So Tal is following the line played by Spassky against Fischer during the 1972 World Chess Championship match. Bishop e7 by Zaid, white castled kingside, h6, bishop takes f6. In that game played between Spassky and Fischer, Spassky decided to move back his bishop on h4. But in this case we see bishop takes f6. Bishop takes f6. Already we have a somewhat unpleasant pin on which later Black can even rely. And at this point we see e5. As white is leading in development, which he gained at the cost of sacrificing a pawn, he wants to organize a quick attack and target opponent's king. With this move, Tal is blocking the long diagonal, and then using the fact that the long diagonal is temporarily blocked, is centralizing his knight. Of course, e takes f4 is not good. You will get a very awkward pawn structure. That's why at this point Zaid played knight d7. And there comes f5. Tal is playing very aggressively. Rook takes f5, bishop e7, bishop c4 hitting on f7, knight f6. At this point f6 looks very solid. If queen d5, then rook f8. Black is managing to put a tough resistance. But in the game 2, bishop c4, Black answered with knight f6. Rook takes e5 and knight takes e4. At this point Black has a very nice chance of castling kingside. The bishop is protected, but Zaid didn't use his chance and instead played knight takes e4. And instead of recapturing, as Tal gained a very nice chance of keeping Black king in the center, he went for bishop takes f7. King takes f7, queen d5 check, king g6. Well, if a move like king f8, then white can play rook takes e4, and white has a very dangerous attack. That's why Black played king g6, which according to Stockfish is the most accurate move. Queen takes e4 check, king f7, rook f1 check. Well, if queen d5 check, then again Black can play king g6. At this point king f8 is not good, because in the end of the day, yes, you're losing the rook. That's why in the game we see rook f1 check, bishop f6, and there comes knight c5. Tal is switching into the attack this knight as well, relying that the bishop is pinned. Rook e8. Meanwhile, Black is trying to consolidate his position. Now a move like rook takes e8 will allow Black to win this knight on c5 with a check. And then Black can play, for example, rook a7. That's why instead of choosing that dubious line, Tal played queen d5 check, king f8, queen d6 check, king f7, knight takes b7. Well, it turns out that at this point we have an equality, and according to Stockfish there is no way to make a progress despite the fact that Black king looks somewhat vulnerable. Stockfish suggests to give a perpetual check. I'm sure Tal had seen this line, but he decided to go for a risk and instead he went for knight takes b7. The problem with this move is that in here, by playing bishop takes b7 and giving up this queen, black could gain advantage. Black has 2 rooks against a queen, which means that it's equal, and 2 bishops against a rook and a pawn. The engine gives black minus 3.5 advantage. But instead, in the game to knight takes b7, Zaid answered with queen a4. Here comes queen d5 check, king f8. This is already a losing move. At this point, it was high time to cover the king. If rook takes e6, then rook takes e6, and then king e7. All white can do is to give a perpetual check. But instead, we see king f8, and now let's see how Tal realized the advantage. Knight d6 with a direct mating threat. Bishop e6, but it's too late for this move and you are just losing the bishop without a compensation. Queen d4 check, king h1, queen a7. Well, with this nice maneuver, black managed to neutralize the mating threat, but it's all over. Here comes knight f5, although according to Stockfish, c4 is even stronger in order to make use of this passed pawn as soon as possible. Queen f7, queen d6 check, bishop e7, queen c6, rook d8, queen takes a6, and at this point Zaid resigned. White has 2 queenside passed pawns which guarantee a victory. That's why Zaid decided to resign. So yes, once again we saw that by putting a gradual pressure, Tal forced his opponent to make a mistake and then just crushed him. But all hail to Zaid for holding this long, you know. This is another nice example of how one can organize an attack on the opponent's uncastled king. That bishop takes f7 allowed Tal to keep his opponent's king in the center and target further. Whereas that bishop takes f7. There we have it. At this point, instead of recapturing, we see bishop takes f7 and the unstoppable machine went on with the attack. And in the end, a chess puzzle for you where the task is to find the winning line for white. As usual, we'll wait for your answer in the comment section. Feel free to check out my early uploads as well. We'll see you in my next video. Take care.